Here's another in my line of libertarian videos. This one is the hardest one. And it's on an old issue, so it's not exactly topical, but it's something that repeatedly comes up, and it's the hashtag bake the cake thing. Basically, is the way most people recognize it. Should a business be allowed to quote unquote discriminate? And I, first of all, as far as the make a cake for my gay wedding thing, I do not believe that you have the right to sue for discrimination, because that goes beyond just their discriminating against you, especially since, as far as I know, with the bake the cake thing, they didn't refuse to bake a cake for a gay wedding. They refused to put anything like explicitly about homosexuality on a cake, on the grounds that they weren't going to participate in any speech that they were religiously against. And iconography, even if it's fucking frosting on a cake, is speech. And also, the thing is, that doesn't mean you can't just go somewhere else and get a cake from somewhere else. And that brings me to, I don't necessarily think it's the purview of the government to tell you who you can't serve. And I think that goes beyond religious shit or speech shit. I don't really think it's the purview of the government to say whether or not you have to serve black people or men or women or the young or the old or certain races or anybody. I don't think the government should tell you that you have to serve anyone. Now, that's highly controversial, because that delves into where you're saying it's okay for restaurants or places of business to be racist. Depends on what you think by okay. The idea is that the market corrects for these things, especially in a modern society like this. We tend to, as a society, basically do everything in our power to fucking destroy people in their places of business for refusing to bake gay wedding cakes. How do you think society would treat a business that was explicit in saying that we don't serve black people at our restaurant? That place would go out of business. That place would be lucky not to be destroyed by arsonists. Therefore, that, I think, is enough that the government doesn't need to be getting involved, and there doesn't need to be laws and legislations when the society itself will take care of that by pure freedom of association. The government, the place of business that is racist says our choice of association is we don't, I do not associate with niggers, and then fucking everybody just rejects the fuck out of that place, because the vast majority of society is, we don't associate with people who say that. Like, fuck you. We will spread the word that you are a racist, bigoted fucking organization. And like I said, even criminals will fucking attack your business. I think that's highly likely. So it's not in your best interest to do that. And the government is not necessary in producing this paradigm. So our society already does. And it's also like, say, take a restaurant that has a dress code. These still exist. Why does that place say we don't associate with people unless you're in a suit and tie? Even cheap suit and ties are quite expensive. That's a classist, discriminating against free expression. Why do we allow that? Well, they only want to associate with people who wear suits and fucking ties, and for some reason, all of us are okay with that, but we're not okay with other things. And you say, well, that doesn't make any fucking sense. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? Because that's discrimination. I thought you said we were against discrimination. Well, no. We're just not okay with discriminating against people because of their sexuality and race. not because they can't afford a tie. Or, you say, well, they wouldn't eat at that place because they couldn't afford the food. Well, what if they can afford the food, but they don't want to wear a suit and tie? Or what if a suit and tie is against their religion or something? Well, that's not a problem that exists. Well, it's only a coincidence that that problem doesn't exist. But if it did exist, uh, what if uh, what if a restaurant said we only serve people if they wear big white cloaks and white pointy hoods? You see what I mean? You would say those arguments absurd, but I don't really think they're absurd. And I also don't think huge lawsuits are necessary to take care of this stuff. And you could say, well, what if society is racist enough that that business can survive and thrive and harm the community? That there's enough racists that the market doesn't correct for that. Well, then you have no faith in a society to do the right thing, apparently, or you think that our society would allow for that. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who think you have to hashtag bake the cake also think that our society is that bad. Newsflash, it's not. It's not even fucking close to that bad. Our society is not that racist or that bigoted against gay people. If our society was that bigoted against gay people, gay marriage wouldn't be legal. Now, gay marriage always should have been legal. And ironically enough, marriage is another thing that the government actually doesn't need to be involved in. But that's another argument for another time. The thing is, um, part of the problem with progressives is that they use the state to police things like discrimination. However, they also use the state to police things like what you say, what you think, what you can and can't buy. Because while a bunch of people are saying bake the cake, they're also saying you can't sell that video game, you can't sell that book, you can't make that movie, you can't cast that actress or that actor in that role. You can't use the state to remove your rights, use the state to remove your rights. But if a private business wants to do something like, say, I don't want to serve those people because I think that what they do is immoral, or, I religiously can't associate with that for fear of my own immortal soul or some shit like that. All of a sudden, it's use the state to fuck with the guy who's doing what you do on a fucking daily, if not hourly basis as a progressive. It's hypocritical on top of all that. So it's just, this is one of those things that is a little bit complicated and harder to grasp for some people, but I really don't think you have to be particularly smart or well versed to understand that it's actually not in your best interest to have these kinds of discrimination laws. And of course, they're ripe for abuse, and their abuse is far in excess of can a place of service be discriminatory. We already have state funded and operated universities and state subsidized businesses instituting far more discriminatory and harmful practices, uh, like in what do you call it? Scholarships, in admission to universities, in HR policies for states subsidized businesses, that kind of thing, where they are openly, deliberately, and proudly racist. And a lot of these companies that do this, and a lot of these universities who do this, are experiencing a public backlash, where the state is continuing to subsidize them despite their negative behavior, but the market is rejecting them. Take the University of Missouri. When all that shit went down in Missouri 2 years ago, immediately afterwards, their admissions had gone down by like 25%, because it was all over the media, the horrible shit the University of Missouri was doing. Something very similar is going on with Evergreen College, where they are a huge drop in applicants because their university is a far leftist shithole that is terrorized by progressive student groups, like literally terrorized. So the market is rejecting these people, and a lot of people are saying, hey, the state shouldn't be funding these places because they operate in completely unconstitutional ways. But the state has continued to fund these places, but these places are experiencing huge drops in business because the market is rejecting them. So think about it like that. And it's complicated and it's uncomfortable. And even I'm not like 100% comfortable, but I would rather the market handles it than the government. And that's why I'm a libertarian about it. I might not be like super 100% like sold on it, but I think as far as I know, the government is not the right source of a solution. It's inferior to the market. Thanks for watching.